Welcome to Coffee and the Bull.
Hey guys, welcome to Coffee and the Bull with Mike and John. We've got our guest Steve here today. Some of you may recognize him from TikTok with his amazing drumming abilities and skills where he drums along, skill set that I don't have.
Just beating and banging.
Right. I mean,
That's what I do.
I drum with my fingers. I was going to go a whole nother road with that.
Yeah, you could.
Steve and I have been friends since about 2017.
Which, if I could say that, that's a feat for Steve, because being friends with you is kind of a difficult task.
Thanks.
So
Thanks. Well, he didn't create a podcast.
He's a patient person, so.
Right. So with that, Steve and I met at a Harley dealership, kind of bonded over our love for zombies. Well, it's my love for zombies. He just likes horror movie stuff. So Steve's here today. We're going to talk about addiction, recovery, and really something that I don't think anybody has ever anticipated seeing, and that's two cops and a recovering drug addict sitting in a room.
Addict, you know,
Right.
on a
Right.
podcast
Two cops
today.
and a drug addict
It
walking
sounds,
to a bar.
sounds like a movie, right? Or a bad joke. You know?
Oh. So yeah, so
Bad
that's
dad joke.
right. That would be a great. That'd be a great one.
It'd be an interesting story. I'd love to see how that played
Right,
out.
right. At the end of this, Steve's not going to jail.
Right.
This time.
Right, right. So
I'm still young.
yeah, we're gonna basically go down Steve's road. This is gonna be Steve's story on to how he went from okay to hit the bottom and then back up to the top, and living a better, healthier life.
Healthier. Yeah, healthy.
As he's drinking Pepsi. Never mind.
Jesus. Okay.
You want me to start over with the dad jokes? We can do this.
No, no,
Nah,
no.
we don't do
Please
that.
don't. Please don't. Please don't.
Two cops and a drug addict walking to a bar.
Right, right. We're just gonna keep
We had
going.
to come up
Right.
with an answer for that one.
Two cops and a drug addict walking into a
Walking to a
bar.
bar.
Yeah. So, without much further ado or interruption, Steve, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your drumming, and we'll go from there as far as your story goes.
In terms of like jumping straight into the attic part, or just the what I'm doing now part.
Let's start with the attic. You know, let's
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
for the listeners at home, it's going to be, you know, we're going to get kind of dark, or maybe we don't know.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to be controversial. Because
Definitely.
this is something that doesn't happen. You don't tend to get, you know, it seems like we're taught to be one side of the coin or the other. You know, you got
Right.
I don't want to say cops against criminals, but that's basically kind of how society views it. So
Yeah.
but this is, you know, Steve represents, like we talked about before the episode, represents a success story that you don't see that often. You know?
Right.
You know, we see too many times, especially in our line of work, where people go down the road, but they don't ever get off of it. You know, they take in.
Yeah, it winds up killing them.
Yeah, it winds up killing them. You know, like I've got, early in my career, there was a female who, you know, when I say gorgeous, it was absolutely gorgeous female.
Yep.
And 6 months later, you know, she went down the heroin road, and within 6 months, it was a, you know, complete. You know, she looked 15, 20 years older,
Right.
and just tired. You know, and you hate seeing that. You know, you can't change anything about it. So, with you, I think you bring a different perspective than a lot of people get.
Right.
A different, not approach, but a different experience. You know?
Well,
It's
a lot
more
of
of a-
people are raised in that life too.
Yeah.
You got to factor that in. I wasn't. I neither one of my parents were smokers. They were both athletes. To my knowledge, my dad maybe tried a cigarette when he was a teenager. My mother never did. So for me to kind of go down that road, now there was addiction in my family, and there's a genetic side to addiction. We learned this kind of stuff in rehab, and so I had a grandfather who was an alcoholic, and I've had on both sides of the family people who had drug problems, alcohol problems. So it definitely was passed down to me, but I don't kind of.
It wasn't laid out in front of you to see it.
No, it was nothing
Right.
like that. I remember like growing up and going like to see, to a family member's house. I'm not gonna say which one, and seeing like my cousins, like doing shady stuff, and I'm just like I didn't understand it because I was so young. But
Right.
my dad was like, "Oh, it's time to go," was kind of thing. And I kind of figured out, later on what that meant. but
They were about to have some sort of episode they didn't want you exposed to,
Right.
type thing.
right.
Um,
So, in terms of like drug addiction, though, like I was a party animal, not so much a drug addict for years. I thought I was having like a really good time, and then one day I go to get some dental surgery done, right? And they give you prescription pain medication.
right.
And then one day it's just like, I'm really liking this medication, and I started taking 2 or 3. Before you know it, I'm like asking people, hey, you know where I can find some more of this? Because my doctor will refill it. And before you know it, you're using needles.
Right.
You know?
And you had a fear of needles, right?
I had a fear of needle tug, yeah.
Same.
And I'm kind of like that now. If I go now, like I had to get had a bursitis flare up. Then they gave me a shot of some steroid, I don't know what it was. And it freaked me out like it did back when I was a kid. I'm like, that's weird, because there wasn't a day that would go by where I didn't want to poke myself with one, several times a day,
So how long were you using heroin? If we
Well, it was heroin was part of it. Morphine was my
okay.
my go-to. Oxycontin, morphine, Dilaudid. Those I'm sure you've seen
Right.
those on the
Right.
streets.
Believe it or not, that's decreased substantially.
Well, y'all,
today,
At least in this area.
Yeah,
we have
yeah.
like a fentanyl problem today,
Right.
right? I mean, I'm
Right.
so out
Yep.
of touch with how things are today.
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, right.
I hear stories about so and so dying on fentanyl, and have you heard? Remember that guy you knew back? I hear it all the time. It's like, well, I don't know how it's come. I know if I've heard how it comes in, and it's like it's being made at labs at home and all that shit. I don't know. I don't know how it works, but
So your addiction didn't come from a bad life. It didn't come from
No.
a hardship. It was just a
no, I was in a very privileged family, I think.
Well, and that's what. So we had talked about it again right before the podcast. That's kind of the opioid narrative.
Right.
Is it's not guys who just grew up in it, who had a bad hand dealt to them or whatever.
Right.
It's guys who were successful. They had good careers, things like that. And in your case, it was a surgery. But in a lot of people, it might be they were in a workplace incident. They broke their foot.
Right.
Had to have surgery or whatever.
I hear it
and-
all the time about somebody
Right.
having back issues.
and they
then,
get it addicted to the pain pills.
it falls into that opioid crisis thing
Right.
that went on real heavy in the 90s, early 2000s, where they were saying that the pharmacies were prescribing and over prescribing and stuff
Right.
like that.
So it's not the person who you hate saying it, but we all did, especially when you're younger. You look over, oh, that's just a crackhead walking down the road,
Right.
or whatever derogatory term we want to use for them. And some of it, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying hey go hug your neighborhood drug addict. I'm not
Right,
going down
right.
that road. But it's understanding that hey a lot of them didn't choose to be there.
Right.
It wasn't a.
I
wanna
understand
go
the
get-
frustration of
Right.
being around them now,
Right.
because I do work with the public and I deal with the guys that come in that were like I was, and I'm like, holy,
Right.
that was okay. I get it now, but it's like,
So I got a quick question for you. Because this is something that I've kind of developed on my own through law enforcement, dealing with these individuals, is that the addiction itself is more of a disease, and once you have it, it's hard to break that. But that, like, my own opinion is the choice to do it, not once you're addicted, the initial choice, and say maybe the second or third time, that's a choice. That's a choice you made.
right, it's a choice.
But once it becomes that full-blown addiction, and you're starting to do those questionable things to carry it on,
It's
at
like
that
breathing.
point, right, at that point, you're stuck. You're it's a disease at that point.
I was, even as an addict, I was like, I didn't want to think I had, like, disease sounded so over exaggerated.
Right.
I'm like, I thought disease was like cancer, things like that. I'm like, even as a recovering addict in rehab, and they're saying they're using the D word, and I'm just like, I don't see. I just don't. But I see. I get where it's how the epidemic it is, and how it is considered a disease from an outside source. Yeah,
Right.
I get it. Yeah, but when I was in it, I was just like, I didn't think. When I was going to meetings, I was like, I have this disease, and I didn't think like that, and I didn't want to think in terms of like living the rest of my life as, hi, I'm Steve, I'm this for the rest of my life. Because there's people
Right.
that go to these meetings for like years and years and years, cry every single week, and they get their chips, and It's like they're still stuck in that mindset. And
The
if it works
victim
for you, if it
mentality
works
type
for
thing?
you, if it works for you, then if it keeps you sober, then don't stop doing it. But I've had to find other avenues. I couldn't do it because I think if I was going to meetings like that, it would wind up.
It almost keeps like a fresh wound
Yeah,
where you're
Yeah.
ripping the Band-Aid off every single time you go to it.
yeah.
Okay.
So I kind of like that, but it's like everybody's addiction is different. Everybody with that's different. There's no two addicts are the same, and each drug out there is different of how people handle it. I mean, we have a huge meth problem around here.
Yes,
I'm
we
sure,
do.
and you guys being law enforcement, you see it way more than I do. So, and I get frustrated with it. I'm like, God, why do y'all want to stay awake that long? There's nothing to do around here that you need to be awake.
I love my bed too much, man.
Right.
Oh,
Like,
my
that's,
God.
that's why I can't go down the. I'm not going down any narcotics road. But
But-
if I had to choose one, meth is not the one for me.
No,
like I'm too
you-
lazy for that.
Right.
Yeah. That's not a good one.
I just want to.
I can't.
I don't want to be awake.
I
that
have,
long.
like,
I want to be clear to all the people who I work with who are listening to this. I'm not.
not going down that road.
He's
Going
not
down
ever going to do
narcotics
it.
road,
That's
you
what
know.
I'm here to
Don't be
remind.
doing a
Don't
search
do
warrant
it.
at my
I've
house
done
in
it.
the morning.
Right.
Let me
I
tell
will
you,
be
there
sleeping.
wasn't a drug I haven't tried. I've done crack. I've done meth. If it's was made, I probably had it in my body at one point
Right.
or another.
So was
My drug of
it?
choice was opiates.
So was it just during the recreational time that you tried all these, or was it once you were on that?
No, I think
That-
like the drugs like crack and meth came along during the points when I couldn't find other things, like the things that I needed. And I thought, well, I got to have something in my system or I'm going to feel like shit. And I would go get my hands on a Xanax or anything I could find. And I would make the mistake of like, oh, I'm going to go get some speed. That'll make me feel better. And it just heightens everything and makes everything. Now you're paranoid, sick,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't sleep. I'm like, I'm never going to figure this out.
I'm the worst drug addict
And
ever.
then you try the alcohol, and it was like, it's like, oh, maybe if I get drunk, I'll feel bad. No, now you're just sick, and now your stomach, everything's messed up. I'm like, nah, it doesn't work.
Right.
So what was the hardest part for you through the entire process?
The hardest part for me,
From when you started and got hooked to you're done and you're in recovery, like through this whole process, what's the hardest part?
the hardest part was like the bullshit I put people through. Myself, that comes later. The battle comes like you got to deal with like if you think in terms of the 12-step program, the AA stuff and all that.
Right.
Yeah. I can't recall the order in which everything is in.
Well, it's
I know
been
the-
almost
I-
20
I
years,
know
so
the
I mean,
Serenity Prayer like the back of my hand. It's just it's tradition. It's whatever it is, and it works for people. But I think the shit that I put my family through was the worst part.
Right.
I didn't have a wife or kid back then, so
So okay, I have if you don't mind, it's kind of a complex question. All right?
Mhm.
You've been clean. You've been sober since 2018, or I'm sorry, 2008.
2008.
So-
I think it's when I got to rehab. So yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
so
so we're
for-
about 16, almost
yeah,
17 years.
So
Yeah.
more, almost coming up on two decades. So obviously things are different now. Like they've implemented Narcan and things like that to help
Right.
assist it. Now, one of the things that I noticed in honestly very very early in law enforcement was cops are kind of cold-hearted to addicts, and what I mean by that is when we respond to an overdose or whatever, honestly, we don't show a lot of emotion to
The empathy.
to the addict or to honestly his family, and what I mean by that is I've been there where we have done CPR or Narcan on an addict who overdosed, and they came back too. So hey, they're still living, which is good. But they would have a family member, whether it be a mom or dad, brother, uncle, whoever, come over, and and unfortunately, kids get brought up around that.
Yep.
And so the family member would start berating them, the addict, for, hey, they're doing this in front of their kids. They're doing, you're embarrassing your family. Why would you do this? And trying to bring logic to something that I don't think you can apply logic to,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Right.
So, and I guess my question would be, did you have can you offer some guidance on that for the guys that, I know we don't have answers, everything's different, but did you have an instant where like you had that where somebody's trying to talk logic and hey, you're letting yourself down, you're letting your family down, but yet you're still just so tucked to it. Like, what's the thought process there?
Well,
Does that make sense?
it does make sense, but it's like, when you're in the clutches of something like that and your body's going into seizures and everything, you're vomiting and stuff, like all the word, it's just words, and it's like
Right.
you believe it, what they're saying is right. You don't want to be there yourself. You've got yourself there, but you really don't want to be there. But it's not as simple as like, I'm just going to sit in this room and you board that door shut, you board that window shut, and you don't let me escape. It doesn't work like that. Don't
Right.
find a way out. I've had my parents several times lock me in a room. They've tried everything, and I mean, I think during Hurricane Katrina, I was very strung out.
Yeah.
Somehow I managed to find a way to get drugs during the storm.
That's some dedication.
That's yeah, that's
That's,
some dedication.
yes.
'Cause Were you here for
No,
Katrina?
I was in Iraq during
Like
Katrina.
it shut everything here down. Like you
Right.
weren't going nowhere. There was no. I think it was like 2 weeks we had.
We
on
had to
average, people
we had
didn't
to
have power.
evacuate, right? Okay. We evacuated to some house. I don't know who it was, and I found a medicine cabinet. Oops, I'm like, this is I mean, what am I doing? And this is in my head. I'm sick. Like Louisiana just got destroyed. I'm looking at the news footage, and New Orleans is underwater and
You
all
may
this
not
crap.
have a house to go home to.
Well, we had a house. This was after the storm.
Okay.
Okay,
I
so
got
we
you.
were but we weren't sure like when the power was coming back on, and the stress level was high, and I'm like, oh no, I'm really sorry. I'm in pain. I'm just agonizing pain. And I remember like going out of town and like asking people on the streets. I'm like, hey, I mean, we're going to shopping malls and stuff like that, and they got these signs like, "Welcome Hurricane Katrina refugees." We're up in northern Louisiana, on the Arkansas state line somewhere. I don't remember where exactly. And I was finding a way to get. I was just like, I wish I had like that, that go-to mentality like I had back then, applied to life now, because that would be unstoppable.
Right.
I got you.
That would be unstoppable.
I got you.
Man. You know what I mean? Just
Right.
like if I could apply that, like God, I was such a go-getter, and I'm like now I'm just like God, I can't get there
the go-getter for the wrong thing.
for the wrong thing.
Right.
you know?
Right.
So what would you say is, because I know everybody's different when they have their moment to make that change. What was your driving force? What said, okay, Steve's enough and enough is enough?
I was tired of sitting. Let's see, like 4 times in rehab. Got kicked out of the first one, kicked out of the second one.
How'd you
Homeless.
get kicked out of rehab?
You right?
Drugs came in.
Okay.
No.
Because drugs can get in rehabs, and they usually like most rehabs won't let anybody in the same zip code in the treatment facility. That's why they always send you to Mississippi, or they'll send you out of state, right?
Okay.
But they let a local guy in that lived like 10 minutes down the street. He wound up being my roommate, and he's like, "I can get you some coke." I'm just like, "No, I'm already clean. I mean, the drugs are out of my system. I'm breathing. I'm physically fine, but I wasn't mentally fine yet." And the guy brought coke in, and they busted several of us. They sent us all on buses. They dropped me off to one facility, dropped these other guys off, and I left that one and somehow ended up in a homeless shelter in Mobile, Alabama. This is the 3rd time in rehab. And downtown Mobile, sleeping in some kind of homeless shelter. Really horrible place to be, by the way. Don't recommend it. Not
Mobile or the homeless shelter?
Right.
Mobile. I don't know which one's worse, bro.
Take
but-
that, Bama.
Yeah.
Roll that tide.
This is downtown Mobile. I'm like, how the hell am I in Mobile? I'm like lost. I'm like, how am I in Mobile? Like, I was just in Mississippi. I'm like, how close are we? Like, where? I'm like, okay. And then I'm thinking, well, what now? Right? And so there's this, I'm asking some dude on the streets. There's a drug facility up here, a treatment facility that they feed the homeless about once a week. And go talk to them. So I went and talked to them.
This is the
I was
third one, right?
Walking around with a suitcase.
Right.
A
This
roll-around
is the
suitcase.
third rehab, right?
This is the third. Yeah, the third, yes, third rehab.
Yeah, all right.
I'm trying to think here. I'm like, God. But yeah, downtown Mobile, and that was a 90-day program.